What's up, you guys? I'm back in the kitchen cooking. So I have a little backstory. You know, last night was steak night, and yes, we had steak, and yes, it was absolutely delicious. But I took out one too many steaks, and this is really good steak, so I didn't want it to like just sit in the refrigerator and go. I think this is a ribeye. Yeah, this is a ribeye steak. Look how good that looks. Like, look, it's amazing. Anyway, ribeye steak, but let me see. You can see, hold on one quick second. You can see here that I have my stock pots on the cooktop because it's that time of year already. You know, I'm ready for soup, stews, and casserole. And no, it's not chilly outside. I'm just feeling the need for some comfort food, so that's what I wanted. And this is something we haven't had in a very, very long time. Beef stew. But of course, since I'm using steak, I'm going to be making it a little bit different. Check this out. So if y'all saw my video about my grocery shopping hacks, you know what's coming next. So this steak is not going to go to waste. I'm actually going to use it for the beef stew, but I'm going to use it in a very different way because, like I said, this is a very good cut of beef. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sear this like we would eat it normally. I'm gonna sear it, put my seasonings on it, get a good sear, and then of course the same pan that I'm gonna sear it in, that's where I'm gonna put in my water, my veg, all of my veg down here, and that's where I'm gonna finish off the stew. And then instead of cutting this into cubes like you would normally get for stew meat, I think I'm gonna slice it super thin so that you get like nice silky pieces of beef all throughout the stew. So that's what's on the menu tonight, beef stew with a twist. All right, so my steak is just about ready. You don't want to overcook it just because it can cook longer during the stewing process. But I cooked it for 5 minutes on one side and about 3 minutes on the opposite side, and now I'm just going to move it off to a plate. Look how that looks so good and crusty. But so now I've got all the juicy bits down in my pot, and y'all know how I feel about these juicy bits. That's the gold right there. Let me show y'all the steak real quick. Look how nice that looks. Like, I want to eat it, but we're not going to eat it. We're going to let that cool off a little bit so I can add in my veg. And I'm just using, like, all the standard veg. I have some fresh tomatoes and some part canned tomatoes. But all the standard veg that you would normally put in a beef stew. So, onions, celery, carrots, peppers, potatoes over there, and of course garlic. I put that in everything, but I'm just going to treat the rest of this process like I would a normal beef stew and just throw the meat back in at the end. And that's why you don't want to overcook the meat because, like I said, it can cook while it's in the stewing process with all the veg. So look how good that looks. Like, I just love when there's so many colors in the food. Let that cook down a bit, and then I'll add in my potatoes and some water. I don't need beef broth necessarily this time because I browned that beef, and I'm just going to scrape all the goodness off the bottom of the pot. I'm expecting this to be done in like 30 minutes or less, whereas a normal beef stew is going to take like an hour, hour and a half. So this is a bonus tonight. So one thing that I did want to share is that I did not season my veg when I put it into the same stock pot that I browned the steak in. The reason is because I cooked the steak, like I said, as though we were gonna eat it, which when you sear a steak, you want to season it very, very liberally with salt, pepper, and we like to do garlic powder or a mixture of my smoky seasoning. Tonight I just did garlic powder. So when all of those good juices come off the bottom of that pan, all of that flavor is gonna be in there. So I didn't add any salt, any pepper. I didn't add any seasonings at all. But what I did do, once I cut up my pieces of beef, which I want to show you really quickly how thinly I cut the beef. Cut it really, really thin. Oh, man overboard. Anyway, I cut it really thin. And there, Lola's having a ball with that. I cut it really thin so that it'll just kind of like be yummy bits of goodness going all through the stew. So cut it really thin. And as I was doing that, of course, I cut the bone out, and I did add the bone to the stew, and I did that because I'm trying to show you guys. It doesn't want to cooperate. I did that because that's where the bones are, where a lot of the flavor is, and it's also a great source of calcium. That's why we make a bone broth. So put that in there for extra flavor. I guess it's kind of like taking the place of a ham hock when you make other types of stews or beans and things like that, greens, all those things. So a ton of flavor is going to come from that. I shouldn't need any extra seasoning. If I do, I'll just taste it at the end and adjust as needed. Very last thing we're waiting for is the potatoes to get cooked through. I'm just going to test one. See, it's still it's almost there, but still a little bit hard. I need it to give a little bit more. Once those cook through a little bit more, I'll add back in my slices of beef, give it another 5 minutes or so that it's no longer medium. I want to cook it to medium well, and then we'll be ready to eat. Add in all of my beef with all of the delicious juices. Again, another reason why I shouldn't need any additional seasonings at all. Give that a stir. Pop the top on. I'm gonna give it about 5 minutes. All right, let's check it out. Potatoes. Yep, going through easy. You can see my beef is no longer medium. It's more like medium well almost. So I'm good to go. I'm gonna finish off with just a wee bit of mega chopped cilantro just because I love the flavor. So I'm doing it. And it's gonna be a little bit of extra freshness. So there you go. Done and done. It took a little bit longer than 30 minutes, maybe 40. I've never made a beef stew in less than like an hour, hour and a half. So there you have it. Beef stew on a weeknight. Almost 30 minutes.